this is effectively a European funded project where we set up and monitor the slow sand filters, so we check the water quality coming in, we use it for irrigation off the roofs, into the tanks, use it for irrigation inside and use it for irrigation outside. And the water sinks through the slow sand filter. Over a period of a few hours it filters through sand, collected at the bottom. There's a slight slope in the sand filter. Then it goes into a chamber next to that big one cube tank there. There's another chamber in there. And actually in that white chamber we're introducing a carbon source. I think it was mentioned in some of the presentations. And that's really important to stimulate biological activity. And you get much enhanced performance of the wetlands by adding that agent. In Spain they use a waste liquor from beer brewing. We couldn't find a beer brewer locally, so we're using St George's whiskey distillery. So Alberto is a student over here writing up his dissertation on this project from Barcelona, and he's been to see the distillery yesterday and got some samples that we're just testing out. And if anybody would like to try a sample of St George's English whiskey, then we have some samples down here.
Hello to everybody. First, sorry because my English is not as good as yours, but I try to do the best. I always want to explain what we are working in the Cleanleach project, and I want to go to the beginning. In the last century, technically we have a very good level, and we can transform areas dramatically, and we solve a lot of problems that we have with nature. But we notice that we lose also something. We gain things, but we lose also things. So for this reason, like in New York, what is planning in the future is returning to green, make the things greener. And I think that more or less this is something that in all the world we are trying to use what the benefits of nature now that we know more how it works. And we are worried about nutrients, and there are, of course, you will know situations, but this is two different kind of situations. This is photos from China, and this is a beach covered with algae because of the nutrient production that is very high, and in some places is nearly dramatic. Also it decays and creates other problems. And here there is something more closer to me. That is, I came from Catalonia, from Barcelona, and in our area we have a lot of agricultural going for centuries, and all the fountains, all the water from subsoil are poisoned. So you can drink in summer. Now, for example, we are 40 degrees. You can drink from this water because you can have stomachache, and it's because the water is polluted. And this will take centuries to clean for themselves. For this reason, this is just to show. This is a place that in a place that we have a channel for irrigation. We create a wetland. Then in the entrance, we create a depression system with plants, and later on there is a lake for biodiversity, and finally there is a final place that the water goes into subsoil, and close to here is where the whole town close to here gets his water from the groundwater. And thanks to this small project that increased the biodiversity, they reduce the cost of cleaning the water, because the water now has better quality. This is a small. This is one of our jobs, but is to show that sometimes small ideas can also create good economical and environmental benefits. And one of the things that we are focusing is the problem of nurseries and intensive agricultural, because sometimes they are using, of course, nutrients to produce the plants, and some of their stuff goes directly to the groundwater, directly to the rivers, and we want to try to find solutions, and we create this project with a global project financed by the European Union. And the idea It's working? No. How it works, this?
To click on.
It's closing. No.
Yeah.
Here.
Is this the competition?
There's a competition. You failed.
Okay. And we create a whole system trying to find the best way to make the treatment. So we make a sand filter, then a retention tank that water can be reused, and this tank goes to a wetland for purification. Later on I told more in details, and the water that we get is nearly too clean, and then we can reuse or just leave everywhere. No? Of course in Spain we are going to use all the water again. So this is the main idea of the project, is trying to find what are the different possibilities that we can manage in a nursery to improve the quality of water. Now we are going to explain a little bit about the details of this. The first thing, I think that you have already talked about that in our first presentation. It's essential to create conditions that makes biofilm to do this work, no? And we need to approach, and the most important thing is create anoxic conditions for the nitrification. That finally is what is more interesting for us. The bed filtration, the sun bed is important because we notice that with this system we can eliminate especially fungi and also all the bacteria that can be pathogen bacteria and all that. And we have tested, we introduce fungi directly in the field, but big quantities, to see what's happening, and we can prove that this system really gets rid of fungi. That's very important in a nursery, because if you introduce, if you recirculate a problem, then you can have a big problem. So the idea of having bed filtration is to prevent pathogens and to prevent fungi in the rest. Of course, our design is doing everywhere when they are production plants on the top, but of course can be reduced depending on the nursery and the conditions and their way of planting. And at the end, this is the sunbed. We create a superficial well treatment, basically because I came from Mediterranean and we don't have too much water. Of course, if I have water, I will use floating elements, but here it's not possible, and we use this system. It's very important the depth of the system. We have tested different depths, and more than 0.4 meters makes possible to have anoxic conditions, so the nitrification goes on. So that's essential and very important. Also, our idea is that this can be placed everywhere in the nursery, also in the entrance, close to the house, so this can be a garden. So apart from plants that can be useful for increasing the quality of the water, we are worried about the paper of landscape of the plants, no? Because we have seen before that the plants really are just a media, it's not what they are more acting. So we are very interested in create landscape on that, and we have made some studies. Of course, these are different works we have done for wastewater treatment. Of course, also if you have a house, if you have also a school, anything that you have close to the nursery can be used and introduced in the system. So you can mix just the water of the nursery treatment with the treatment of houses or anything that you are closer to the house, and this can be very useful sometimes. Another thing that is important is about the paper of plants, because we have seen that these are some studies we have done with different species, and I think that the most interesting thing is the depth of some of them is not so bad. It goes quite deep. This is tested in nature and also in a special channel, and the importance of that shows the paper of plants that can introduce oxygen in some areas if we need it, but also we notice that when the suspension solids that are that can came in the system, thanks to the movement of the plants, are broken and are incorporating into the system. And we are now going on with some studies to see if really the block of a gravel system, of course if you have a lake you don't have this problem, if the block of the gravel system can be, if you have plants, the plants do this effect of movement, they broke and makes that the gravels don't block. And this is something that we know that happens, and we are studying how it works. But it's just this is what we have done to show this system. This is an area of 1,000 square meters, and this is the wetland. And this is, we have done several. We play with the system to see what's going on. And we notice that the most important thing here is is when we make the correct depth of the system, and the second is that we need a carbon source, because without carbon, bacteria can do anything, and are the most important thing. So as soon as we add carbon source here, our levels of these GOT and nitrates are reduced nearly to zero, so we can be very excellent if we have the conditions. And we use for source of carbon part of the beer waste, but also other things can be used. Well, of course, in each nursery has their own process. They have different. Some are producing different kind of plants. The nutrients they are using in different ways. Rainfall is different, evaporation is different. So we need to study all the things, all the data, in order to create something that for cost and for design is more approach to what they really need, everyone, no? And well, this is just some baseline of the one that we have done in the Mediterranean area. And well, this is during the process, of course. If you need to introduce things like the landscape and also pipes that drains the water from other areas that goes to the center. And this is what we have done. And this the impermeabilization, and then the gravels and the sand for this sandbed filter. And this is the execution of the work. We install normally now UVMAX blankets, because with wild pigs and also some animals we have a lot of problems, and with these blankets is perfect because they never drill and we don't have any problem on that. Okay?
Thanks, Albert. So I'm David Holland from Salix. Salix are effectively the UK partner for the Cleanleach project. Our role really is two-pronged. It's to create a reciprocal site at a nursery here in Croxton to show that the technology will work, but also then to develop and work out ways of making this technology transferable to other markets, so not just for horticulture but for other sectors as well. So I'll talk you through what we've done here in terms of our system. It's slightly smaller than the Spanish system. We're a little bit behind. We haven't got data. Alberto is here from Spain, from Barcelona, starting to set up results at the moment. So as I say, we're a little bit behind, but the physical Cleanleach filter system is in place, and we'll get to look at it this afternoon. And the idea is again, we're looking at a fully recyclable water system. It hasn't rained for virtually 12 weeks here. Everything's desperate for a drink. And today of all days, it's going to chuck it down all day. So it's probably the first time we've actually harvested any quantity of water. So the idea is, off all the plastic, it's about half an acre of plastic polytunnels. We'll harvest the rainwater, store them in tanks with a basic sediment filter to take out the larger particles and leaves. The other big change we've made to the Spanish system is we wanted, rather than import sand, because we're looking at sustainability issues, we wanted to reuse the Breckland sandy soils that occur naturally in this area. The problem with the Breckland soils is a very high silt content, and once you work them and then replace them, they compact, so you don't get any filtration. The way we've got round that is adding a fibre, which again we can look at when we go out this afternoon. It's from Germany. It's a very unusual name, Schlitt. Correct pronunciation, Thomas?
Yeah.
Schlitt. Schlitt fibres are sort of a 10% of the way to becoming coal. So they're organic wood fibres. The range of applications for these is phenomenal. I know Thomas and Volker are giving a talk on it tomorrow. It's a waste product from the brown coal industry. Here we're actually using it because it has the potential to have absorption and act almost as a biochar. But critically here for us, it's adding physical structure to the soil, so stopping this compaction of these fine soils. So it's actually working really as an organic content to improve soil structure and drainage. The other thing we've done differently, we've put a subsurface flow reed bed in, but from Ian's talk earlier, you saw the benefits that these floating wetland systems can have. So we've installed a biohaven floating system in one of the channels, so we'll have a direct comparable review really of how the system performs with subsurface flow gravel reed bed and a floating system alongside each other. We're in relatively shallow water, but this is obviously lined with a liner, so the roots can't bed into the soil below. It's a fully contained system. The benefit we're getting obviously is gravel takes up 60-65% of volume. Here we've got open water, so you get a lot more root mass below. And because you've got no gravel, you've got a lot more storage of water, therefore you get higher retention times, so the water takes longer to travel through. So in theory we should be getting far higher treatment levels from the floating system. And as Ian pointed out in his presentation, obviously they're much easier to retrofit to existing water bodies for anything, for whether it's flood defence, whether it's highway schemes. You could retrofit lagoons much easier with a floating system than you can in any other system. Species-wise, again we trawled through literature and looked at which species are commonly used in these treatment wetlands. Phragmites australis is typically the one that's used on every constructed wetland. But certainly for the floating wetland system, the species that we've identified that probably offer more diversity of root architecture and therefore different biological treatment is Carex iris and Lythrum. Lythrum more for probably aesthetic and biodiversity, because it's a nice flowering plant, looks nice and high nectar content. But Carex seems to be a core species, primarily because the amount of top growth you get above is reflected in root growth below. So you get a really high volume of root mass developing underneath with that species. And it's quite common, and you'll see the nursery tour this afternoon. It's something we grow, hundreds of thousands of these plants into sort of coir pallets, which we then put onto the biohaven. And one thing we are looking to do, and I know Richard is going to talk tomorrow on this, is to pre-establish these systems so the floating wetland will actually be grown at the nursery here, so it can go out with mature root systems. So the moment it's put in the lagoon, it's active and working, and you're not waiting for it to develop. So that's the principle. Again, Ian has gone through this. We've used a lot of floating wetlands in the past, and the pipe frame ones tend to sink quite quickly, within about 5 years. But the sort of integral buoyancy within the matrix, and the fact that there's a permanent, long-lasting fibre. We work a lot with coir, and it works fantastically for 5 years. But once the coir degrades and goes, the plants have got nothing to root into. So often they'll send out runners and rhizomes, and they'll try and escape, and you end up with bare rafts after about 5 to 10 years. But because the biohaven is a permanent fibre matrix, that the roots actually sit in there permanently and don't grow out of it. You need a barrier to stop the roots from actually migrating out. Back to Albert.
Well, just the last, we are still going on with some research, and with IRTA, that is Agricultural Research Institute of the Catalan government, we are studying how different plants can really make changes in the retention time, in the oxygen, and all these things. And we create this this place with 18 channels of 12 meters, and we are studying these different plants to see if we can find how the plants really can give differences. If it's important to use different kind of plants or just one, or we know that the root system are absolutely different. Tifa is not growing everywhere. Is making just a small big mass on behind. Phragmites tries to go everywhere. So we are trying to see if the use of different plants also can give us any opportunity for solving problems that we can have. That's it.